Hey folks, welcome to your your week 3 video. So this week we're going to get into writing an informational interview request. So look at week 3 on your homepage of Canvas. The first thing that you'll see do is your revised personal statement by Sunday night. So use your peer review feedback, use my feedback, which you'll get over the next couple of days, and revise your personal statement. Okay, so that's due Sunday night. Your new technical challenge due this Sunday night is to write a informational interview request. And you're like, well, what's that? Right? So you have several readings on how to request, conduct, and follow up on an informational interview, templates, and tips, right? Templates are examples, right? So you have lots of examples of what this looks like. So first I would read the how to request and conduct one. So let's pull that up. Okay, so this is a kind of a long reading. It's put out by LinkedIn, but it contains all the information you need. Okay, so you're like, well, what is an informational interview? I just really that was the wrong one. So what's an informational interview? So go through that, right? You're not asking for a job, folks. This is asking for advice from someone in your field. Okay, so if you're nursing or aviation or culinary, right, it is a request for some advice. That's it, right? And there's a very specific structure for requesting this advice. So we'll look at some of the message templates in a moment. But that is your technical challenge this week, is to find somebody to make the request. And then what I want for the discussion peer review board is show us your template that you used, your message, your request message, and the follow-up. And that's what we'll work with this week. Okay, so let's look at, well, who do I ask for this? What does the message look like? So, feel free to ask anyone in your existing network if they have direct knowledge of your field, okay? So if your aunt is a aviation mechanic or she knows one, use your existing network, right? If there's no one with direct experience in your network, then go through LinkedIn, and I'm going to show you that in a second. Okay, so again, right, go through LinkedIn or people you already know, right? And let's look at LinkedIn. I, went to the Career Center a lot at the UW. They told me, get on LinkedIn, start making informational interview requests. So that was all very helpful to me in my career. So I'm just going to be a conduit for that wisdom. If you're not on LinkedIn, it's a part of this assignment, right? Make a LinkedIn profile. So think of this as professional social media, okay? If you're spending 4 hours on TikTok a week, right? Maybe do 2 hours on LinkedIn and 2 hours on TikTok or Insta, right? So think about what social media am I on, and what about LinkedIn, right? TikTok is not going to help you get a job. LinkedIn absolutely will, right? It's about who you know. So let's look at how we can, right, use LinkedIn and find people within our field. Okay, so this is my LinkedIn page. It's got a lot going on, but an easy way to do this is to go through groups on LinkedIn, right? So I went to groups and I plugged in Aerospace Group Seattle, okay? And I get all these groups in Seattle, right, about my major, about, right, what I want to do ultimately, right? So this first one has a few hundred members. So I've got Seattle Aerospace Aviation, right? And this is for people interested in aerospace, pilots, mechanics, and others interested in connecting, right, with people in this field. And I'm like, well, I'm someone else interested in connecting with people in this field, right? So it's not just people who work in this field, it's also people who are interested, right? So I might join this group, start reading the conversation, see what people are, the news about aviation, issues with aviation, right? And then reach out to a couple of the members saying, hey, I would love some advice in this field. I'm just starting off, getting my AS, which is ultimately going to lead to aeronautics degree. I would love some advice on, what do you love about this career? What's challenging? What might I expect? Right? What classes did you take? Right? So like just reaching out and asking for advice through groups. But you can also just go through people. You can also find people who went to South Seattle, right? So there's ways to look for people's affiliations, right? They went to South Seattle or they went to your high school, right? There's ways to look for that. And you can be like, hey, I see that we both went to South, or I'm going to South, and I would love, to ask for, to share some of your wisdom about aviation and being a mechanical engineer in this field. That's my ultimate dream. Okay? So there's a lot of ways to look for people to make an informational interview request on LinkedIn. You can go through groups, you can go through people, you can also search people's background, like did they go to South? Here's another example, like if you're interested in culinary, I plugged in culinary in groups, and I get all of these, right, culinary arts for professionals. This has 3,000 members, wine and culinary tourism, right? I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I never thought about the tourism side. So I might join that group and then just ask, a few people request their advice, an informational interview. Folks, I would say join, 1, 2, maybe 3 groups. You don't want to join like 10 groups, right? This isn't TikTok, right? You're not, because you want to really get involved and read the conversations people are having in these groups. And that's going to take time, and you need to focus on 1 or 2 groups and what, people are saying, and maybe reach out to 1 or 2 or 3 of those people within that group. Okay, so that's culinary if you're interested in that. So that's how you find people in your field that you want to reach out to. Or again, if you have someone within your existing network, right? These are more, think of these as cold calls, cold emails, right? Or cold messages on LinkedIn. You don't know them, but I'm in this group with you, right? Like, dear, right, whoever the member is, we're both in this group, and I saw you post about the Max, 747. I was really interested in what you were saying, and I would love to get some advice as someone who's starting out in this field, right? It can be that simple, okay? So that is our main reading this week on how to request and conduct and follow up on one of these. Okay, so this is about 10 pages, and it gives you some examples at the end, right? It gives you examples of questions you might ask. So let's go to the templates, right? The examples, right? So if it's someone in your network, right, like a friend of your aunt or a friend of your mother, right? So like, here's a template to use if that's the situation. If it's a cold, message template on LinkedIn, here's another example, right? My name is, Johnny Calavita, and I currently go to South. I was browsing through some LinkedIn, and I joined this group, right? And I noticed that you're a member of this group, and I was really interested in what you were saying about this, Max 747. And I hope you don't mind me reaching out, and I would love to get your advice on starting off in this profession, right? Like how you did it, any barriers that you had to break through, classes that you would recommend, right? So like, just reach out and keep it really open, and I would love your advice. I think that's a great way to put it. Okay, so again, there's lots of examples here, and so what you'll post to the discussion, the discussion box this week should look something like this, right? So use these as inspiration. Don't copy and paste this. It should use this as your inspiration, okay? And as you'll notice, like this is like a few tiny paragraphs, right? This is like 100 words, 120 words. So this isn't like a lot of writing, but it's really focused, concise, and precise writing, right? So you don't want to be wordy. You want to be really direct, right? My name is, I found you through our LinkedIn group that we're in, right? And I would love to ask you some advice, like these following questions, right? If you have time to meet over email or, Zoom, that I would really appreciate it. Okay? So you're really concise and specific. So those are the email templates. And then the last thing that I want you to do, you'll post that request, right? And we'll peer review that. You'll also post your thank you, right? Your follow-up, right? And there's a lot of, right? This should be like 50 words or less, right? So, dear, Dr. C, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I truly appreciate your insights. I certainly will follow your suggestions, right? So this is just the follow-up thank you letter or thank you note, okay? So I want both of those items, the request and the follow-up. And you'll post those to the discussion board for this week. So let's just go to that, right? So here's the discussion board, right? So post your informational interview message request and your follow-up, right? So these should be a couple paragraphs, maximum, right? These should be, right, really on the shorter side. And then read and respond to 2 of your colleagues' informational interview requests and their follow-up and give some feedback. And I give you some feedback that you might give, right? Does the request message include a greeting, a body, and a closing, right? It needs all of those 3 things, right? Dear so-and-so, my name is, and then, thank you for, offering any advice that you can as my closer. Is there a subject line? Is the message clear and concise? Or is it unnecessarily wordy, right? These need to be like streamlined, right? Like you don't want to waste anybody's time, okay? So like simple, right? Like simple and perfect, right? Like that's what I think of these is like, is the purpose clear, right? Is the tone respectful and upbeat and positive and thankful, okay? If not, what are your suggestions for improving it? Did the writer clearly prepare some questions that they might ask, right? So in your request, put a few questions that you would love to ask, right? Like, well, how did you become a aviation mechanic, right? What were the challenges? What classes do you think I should take, right? Do you have any suggestions for improving the questions? So, right, so post your informational request and then your follow-up, and then we'll peer review each other. Okay, so that is the discussion board, and that is this week's major technical challenge. Any questions, please email me. I'm always available to meet by Zoom. But you've got the personal statement due, and then the informational interview request and follow-up due on the discussion board, and the peer review that comes along with that. And there's this rhetoric and audience and appeals. That's a good little reading. It's just going to go into, you need to use some emotion, right? Some rhetoric in this request. So for example, notice the difference between, hey, I would like your advice versus, I know that you have so much wisdom to share about aviation with the younger generations. I would really love some advice, right? So do you hear the difference between, I'm requesting an informational interview from you versus I would really be happy if you could share out your wisdom to the younger generations, right? Do you hear the emotions of that? Like I'm honoring what they know, and then I'm centering myself as the younger generation that needs help, right? That needs the sharing of wisdom. So that's an emotional appeal. So that's kind of what this reading is talking about. Okay, folks. So email me if you have any questions and get all that in by Sunday night. Thank you.